A year after Otto Octavius' death, Peter Parker intends to propose to Mary Jane Watson, who has made her Broadway musical debut. In Central Park, a shooting star lands near the two, and an extraterrestrial symbiote follows Peter to his apartment by connecting to his motorbike. Harry Osborn, realizing Peter is Spider-Man, tries to avenge his father's death. Utilizing his dad's performance-enhancing gas and Green Goblin technology, he fights Peter to a possible impasse, creating halfway amnesia. Meanwhile, police seek escaped convict Flint Marko, who visits his wife and sick girl before escaping. Falling into an experimental particle accelerator that fuses his body with the surrounding sand, he acquires the capacity to control and change his body with sand, becoming Sandman. A crane which goes out of control gets knocked to the building which Gwen Stacy is performing modeling, and Gwen Stacy fall from 62 stories. Peter Parker's as Spider-Man saves her. During a celebration regarding Spider-Man for saving Gwen Stacy's life, Peter kisses her to satisfy the group, angering Mary Jane. Marko then burglarizes a protected truck and escapes after defeating Spider-Man. NYPD Captain George Stacy, Gwen's dad, informs Peter and his Aunt May that Marko is Uncle Ben's actual killer. The deceased Dennis Carradine was Marko's accomplice. At his apartment, as Peter sleeps in his Spider-Man suit while trusting that Marko will emerge out of hiding, the symbiote assimilates the suit. Peter awakens on top of a building, discovering that the symbiote has colored his suit black and enhanced his powers. However, it also brings out darker parts of his personality. Peter finds and fights Marko in a subway tunnel. Finding that water is his weakness, he opens a line, delivering water that reduces Marko to mud and washes him away. Peter's changed comportment alienates Mary Jane, who also received negative reviews from critics. She shares a tender moment with Harry but leaves in regret. Encouraged by a visualization of his dad, Harry recovers from his amnesia and forces Mary Jane to break up with Peter. Harry later meets up with Peter and lets him know that Mary Jane loves him. Under the influence of the symbiote, Peter confronts Harry and spitefully claims that his father never loved him. As Peter leaves after an ensuing fight, Harry tosses a pumpkin bomb at him. Peter diverts it back, disfiguring Harry's face. At the Daily Bugle, Peter uncovered rival photographer Eddie Brock, whose fake photographs incriminate Spider-Man. Distributor J. Jonah Jameson fires Brock and promotes Peter to staff photographer. Afterward, Peter brings Gwen to a jazz club where Mary Jane presently works. While trying to make her jealous, Peter interrupts Mary Jane's performance and dances with Gwen in front of her. Gwen, acknowledging she had been utilized, apologizes to Mary Jane and leaves. After assaulting the bouncers and unintentionally hitting Mary Jane, Peter understands that the symbiote is corrupting him. Retreating to a church bell tower and discovering that the sounds of clanging metal weaken the creature, Peter eliminates the symbiote. Brock, who is at a similar church, turns into the symbiote's new host. As Venom, Brock finds a still-living Marko and persuades him to join forces to kill Spider-Man. Brock kidnaps Mary Jane and holds her captive from a web at a building construction site, planning to kill her in vengeance for Peter ruining him, while Marko keeps the police under control. After Harry declines to help Peter, Harry's butler uncovers that Norman's death was not Spider-Man's fault. While Brock and Marko pin Peter down, Harry shows up to help Peter and save Mary Jane. Brock attempts to impale Peter with Harry's glider, but Harry jumps in and is impaled instead. Peter, remembering the symbiote's weakness, gathers a perimeter of metal pipes to make a sonic attack, weakening it and permitting Peter to separate Brock from the symbiote. Peter activates a pumpkin bomb and tosses it at the hostilous symbiote. Brock, having become addicted to its influence, endeavors to save the symbiote, and both are vaporized. Marko explains Ben's death was an accident that has haunted him and that all that he has done was to help his daughter. Peter forgives Marko, permitting him to escape. Peter and Harry reconcile before the latter dies from his injuries. Sometime later, Peter visits Mary Jane at the jazz club. They embrace and share a dance.